What's up, bud? It's Rob. This is Apparel Success. And if you don't know who I am, I run a Canadian lifestyle brand called K-Bud that's done multiple six figures in sales every year for the past 3 years. So I help clothing brands like yours get really good results. And in this video here, I want to share with you the 10 first-year mistakes that clothing brand startups make. Each of these mistakes that I'm going to share with you has the potential to catastrophically hurt your clothing brand and ruin your clothing brand's chances at success into the future. So I'm going to share with you 10 mistakes that you need to avoid at all costs if you want to give your brand any chance at being successful in the future. Here it is. Apparel Success here is sponsored by my buds over at Design Crowd. If designs are something that you struggle with, I really recommend that you try them out. You post a project on Design Crowd. Amazing designers from all around the world are going to compete for your project. You choose the winner, then you get that design plus revisions. I've literally sold thousands of these designs on my website, and I got them all made through Design Crowd. If you're interested, head over to designcrowd.com/apparel to learn about the special offer that I have for you, or just use the discount code apparel when you post a project on Design Crowd. All right, so let's jump into the 10 mistakes that clothing brands tend to make in their first year. And you're gonna wanna stick around to the end because each and every single one of these is extremely important for you to avoid making within your own brand. The first mistake that clothing brands tend to make is they don't quite understand what their brand is fully about or who it's for before they start trying to sell and before they get fully invested in marketing their brand. What a lot of clothing brands tend to do is they dive headfirst into this because they want to make a lot of money and they haven't quite figured out what their unique selling point is yet. And I actually just got off a call with my buddy who was talking about wanting to start up a golf brand. And I was trying to pick his brain to figure out, if you're starting up a golf brand in the golf niche, what is going to make your clothing brand that you're starting up different from all of the other hundreds and hundreds of golf clothing brands that exist out there? What's going to be your unique selling point? What's going to be your competitive advantage? If you know that right from the beginning, then you can lean into that right out of the gates and it'll give your brand such an advantage to start getting results faster when you first start up rather than trying to figure this out over multiple years. So really take some time to step back from all of the hands-on stuff that you're doing to really get to figure out what the soul of your brand is. What's really going to make your brand different from all the other brands out there. The second mistake that clothing brands tend to make in their first year, and I know that I made this mistake when I first started, is ordering too much inventory. Your expectations of how your clothing brand is going to do right out of the gate are biased. You haven't gotten any proven results yet, so don't go investing your whole life savings into inventory if you haven't proved the concept yet. When you're first starting out your brand, it's 100% okay to launch your brand with the minimum order quantity that you can order for inventory, rather than trying to stack it to the ceiling with inventory because you just have this sort of unwavering self-belief in your brand that it's going to work. What you can end up doing is you can end up pigeonholing yourself with inventory that you can't sell into the future because you realize, oh crap, those designs that I released aren't actually the best that I could do, or they're not really resonating with my audience. Now you want to switch it up, but you can't because you've just invested all of your money into inventory. So I really recommend starting with as little inventory as possible, testing it out and building it up slowly. The third mistake that clothing brands tend to make in their first year is they don't put enough effort into their customers' experience. The reason why this is so important for your brand is because clothing brands are built on repeat customers. If you sell to your first customers in your first year and your mindset is all wrapped in making money and you haven't built a really good product, you haven't thrown in any extra promo items into the orders, your packaging doesn't look very good, and they get it in the mail and they go, this is not actually what I wanted to buy, this doesn't make me happy, and they have buyer's remorse, then that can really hurt your brand in years 2 and 3. So smart brands right out of the gate from their very first customer, they treat them like royalty, because if you can build up a solid repeat customer list that you can email with new products that you're releasing into the future, and you build up this nice flow of customers that you always have that are always going to support you, that's going to be huge in the longevity of your brand. So repeat customers are huge, and the way to get those repeat customers is by focusing on the customer's experience right from the very beginning of your clothing brand journey. The fourth mistake that clothing brands tend to make in their first year, and I'm about to get a little bit nerdy here, that's me sliding my glasses on for you, is that they put way too much of their self-worth as clothing brand owners into the results that they're getting for their brand in their first year, rather than on the actual process that they're sticking to. What happens a lot of times in clothing brands' first years is that they work for 3 months, 6 months, and they notice, oh man, I still haven't really been able to get very many sales for my brand. I must not be doing this right. This must not be good. My brand must not be good. But in reality, you could be doing 100% of the things right that you need to do to see results come in the second year, but you give up too soon because you're focused more on the results that you're getting rather than just sticking to the process. This is the difference between being process oriented, focusing on the process rather than just focusing on the results 24/7. If you focus on the right process and you just stick to that process and you tweak that process, then you're likely going to get much better results into the future. So don't get all hung up on how you're not making sales yet, and just try and stick to a process for 6 months to a year and see how things turn out after a full year of putting in a 100% effort into your process. The fifth mistake that clothing brands tend to make in their first year is that they worry way too much about their margins. They have this idea in their head like they need to make every single bit of clothing for their brand for like $1 from China, rather than just ordering the minimum order quantity from like a local screen printing facility for say $10 a t-shirt and trying to sell them for 30. The reason why that's a better option is because you don't have to worry about dealing with import, export, and all of this crazy complications. And all that you're focused on is just building a great brand from the beginning. Because if you build a great brand with an amazing foundation to start, that's all you need to be successful into the future. And in the future, you can tweak your margins. You can start making your clothing for less money as you start to order more volume. But at the beginning, if you're too hung up on the margins and you're not focused on creating just a great brand, and if that's not where your head's at, then you're gonna likely end up with a whack load of inventory that you got for super cheap, but you've got a brand that doesn't have great products and you're not really doing what's best for your customer. So I don't think you need to worry as much about your margins in that first year of your clothing brand's life. The sixth mistake that clothing brands make in their first year is they don't take enough risks. They do the same thing that all these other brands are doing. There's something known as taking fashion risks in the real world, like when you go out and you dress for everyday life. And what fashion risks do is it's dressing a little bit more edgy, doing something that not a lot of people are doing, and you're taking some fashion risks. But what that does, the upside of that, is it gets more eyes on you. People are gonna be like, whoa, that's different. They're dressing different. Look at that. And you're getting eyeballs, you're getting attention. And the same thing happens with your clothing brand. If your clothing brand is doing the same thing that everybody else is doing, and you're starting up with no extra advantages, no extra resources, then you have to take a certain amount of risk. You have to be bold enough to do something very different, whether that's in your advertising, whether that's in the clothing that you're creating, or the brand concept that you're coming out with. Don't be afraid to take risks and step outside your comfort zone and just be bold with it. The seventh mistake that clothing brands make in their first year, and this one's a little bit more technical, is they choose bad domain names and bad social media account names. What I mean by this is they'll use like a URL for their clothing brand that's like myclothingbrand@bigcartel.com. And it just makes their brand look amateur. Like you want to just have a nice clean .ca.com, whichever country you're in, domain name. And for your social media accounts, you don't want to have any dots or underscores in your clothing brand's name. Ideally, you can find a name for your clothing brand on social media that is just a nice, clean name. That's really going to give your brand a much more professional look. And if you're using in all these different places, like an amateur URL and an amateur social media account name, it just tends to take away your credibility and it makes your brand look less legit. So do your best to actually get real domain names that are just nice, clean names and nice, clean social media accounts that'll really help your brand's perception. The eighth mistake that clothing brands make in their first year is they partner with somebody, one of their friends or something, that's just not on the same page as them when it comes to their ambition, that this is the right path for them, that you guys are on the same page in terms of intellect and in terms of strategies and in terms of vision. And I know that I made this mistake in my first year as well. Me and my buddy ended up partnering on a clothing brand that we went in on. And after about the third year, we had to have that really hard discussion that, hey, we're really not on the same page here. We're really not bringing the same things to the table. And that can be a really hard conversation to have. Luckily, we're still very, very good friends and everything worked out. But I know that that can turn pretty catastrophic really quickly if you partner with the wrong person, and it definitely has the potential to hurt your brand. So be very careful with who you partner with and who you go into business with. 9 times out of 10, you're going to be better off doing this on your own rather than partnering with a friend or something. The ninth mistake that clothing brands tend to make in their first year, and this one is very common, is once they launch their brand, they expect that the whole world's just going to know that their brand exists. They expect that people are going to be able to find out about their brand on their own. And they have this sort of weird delusion where they think that when they launch their brand, that the whole world's just going to get this like ping on their phone that's like, oh, this clothing brand exists, let me go check it out. When in reality, when you launch a brand, you know that for the most part, it's crickets. Like, you just created your social media account, you've got 0 followers. All right, you got to start posting, and getting your brand out there can kind of be hard. And so you have to take all of that responsibility on yourself. The exposure for your brand, getting your brand out there, pushing your brand out into the world is all going to come down to you and your efforts. So start noticing that there's a perfect correlation between the amount of work that you're putting in to get your brand out there and how many people are seeing your brand. The amount of money that you spend on ads, the amount of time that you invest into TikTok ads, the amount of time that you invest into Instagram Reels, all of that is going to be huge for the exposure for your brand. And it's going to be basically the only way that you get your brand out there, because people aren't just going to intuitively know that you've launched your brand if they haven't seen it yet. And the 10th mistake that clothing brands make in their first year is they don't trust their gut enough. They look to other brands to see what other brands are doing to get inspiration for their own brand. And they don't just trust that unique sense that they have that their brand will work and that their brand will connect with their audience. And if you have a unique vision for your clothing brand and how it can be different and all of the ways that you're going to run your brand and do it special, commit to that fully. See that through. Allow that to exist into the world and put your special gift out there into the world, rather than just hiding behind the same exact tactics that everybody else is using, the exact same branding that everybody else is using, the same wording, the same website layout. Do things from your own gut and trust your own gut with this, because there is a huge layer of this that's just purely your own creativity and your own special genius that you need to put into your brand. So don't be afraid to trust your gut as well. I spent a full month recording a 100% free clothing brand course for anybody starting up a clothing brand right now. All you have to do to get access is go to freeclothingcourse.com. You can go through it at your own pace, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.